Very pleased to do so and happy to be there and to be, if only virtually, back in Tirana in Albania. As was mentioned earlier, the OSCE, under the Albanian chairmanship, organized in February a high-level conference focused on the fight against anti-Semitism. Many of the people participating today were there at that conference. So that Albanian leadership, in a sense, began this year, even as it is with us as we come toward the end this fall. The definition really goes back to 2004, 2005. It ultimately was adopted by a small center, the European Center, Monitoring Center on Racism and Xenophobia. It later became the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, but it had witnessed significant upsurge of anti-Semitism in Europe in the early part of that decade. A renewal of incidents, particularly in Western Europe, attacks on Jewish targets. And the reality was people didn't identify them, didn't recognize them, didn't see them as being anti-Semitic. They might have been dismissed as simply being based on some political antagonisms. It became very clear that if we're going to monitor anti-Semitism, identify it, collect data, combat it, we need to be able to first define it. And so what happened after those incidents, and a report first issued that revealed how difficult it was, how most of the monitors of this EU agency didn't even have a definition, that became critically important. Of course, at that time, we also saw the development of anti-Semitic incidents, attacks, rhetorical and even physical, that related to anti-Semitism in the context of anti-Israel animus. So that too was a critical element in all of this.
Right.
As a part of those concerns, we developed a definition, a working definition with examples. It is remarkable today to see that that definition, which with modest changes has become the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism, is gaining such recognition and adoption. That's what we surely hoped for. But now we've seen, and with this conference today, how broadly accepted it is, and it will still become.
Well, so on that note, let's fast forward to today, to the IHRA definition, which, of course, Albania moved to adopt just days ago. Ambassador Kuchler, as the head, the chair of IHRA, tell us a little bit about practically what impact you have seen it have for nations who have decided, who have made that move to adopt the definition.
Yeah, Nuri, thank you very much. Before I come back to your question, I would like to make an introductory remark to Mr. Speaker and to the Combat Anti-Semitism movement. I'd like to thank both of you for convening this important conference. I feel deeply honored to speak at this crucial event to such a distinguished audience. And Mr. Speaker, please accept my congratulations to the Albanian Parliament for having adopted the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. I would also like to commend the Albanian people for its brave acts during World War II under German occupation to save from deportation both Albanian Jews and Jewish refugees who had fled to Albania, searching for shelter. Rabbi Baker has just mentioned the process which led to the definition. The IHRA adopted the working definition in 2016 at the Bucharest plenary. To date, a majority of the 34 IHRA member countries have endorsed it at the national level. By now, it has become the gold standard across the world. Its widespread use speaks to how necessary such a definition was. After all, if you want to address a problem, Rabbi Baker just mentioned it, you must first be able to identify it. I would like to speak about the purpose of the definition. Firstly, the IHRA's working definition of anti-Semitism is meant as a tool to educate and to help the IHRA and all those who may wish to use it better identify anti-Semitism. I would like to underline that it is not a legal text. It is not legally binding, but it has developed a very strong political power. It provides a mutual starting point for discussion, allowing for more fruitful conversations around what anti-Semitism is, how to identify it, and how to combat it. Its examples are illustrative, not exhaustive. There are many more ways anti-Semitism can manifest. I think the definition has helped to sensitize individuals, organizations, and governments to better identify and combat anti-Semitism. It has raised awareness, especially among policymakers, that this dangerous phenomenon exists in all societies. We have come to a point where all nations acknowledge that anti-Semitism exists. There is no discussion about if it exists or not. We have an ongoing discussion about one or two elements of the definition, but the denial of the phenomenon of anti-Semitism is no longer with us. So that, I think, is a very encouraging development.
Certainly. And on that note, to take that a step further, Valentina, in terms of Europe, tell us a bit about the implementation, the process of adopting this definition and implementing it to actually create change.
Okay, good evening, everybody, excellencies, dear friends. I'm proud that this conference is organized here in Albania, and I would like to thank both of them, the Parliament of Albania and Combating Anti-Semitism movement. And it's not, let's say, something that it happened routinely here in Albania. It's linked with the future, with the past, and with the future, I believe as well, and I'm sure about it. And first of all, I would like to say that the adoption of anti-Semitism definition, it is a very good and very important moment, because it's coming in a moment that the anti-Semitism is rising and hate is rising as well. And of course, in Albania, we talked even in this conference a lot about what happened during the Second War regarding the Albanian families who hosted Jewish families. And but the thing that I would like to emphasize, there are two things that I'd like to emphasize. One, it has to do with the fact that in Albania they were all families, which means that Muslim, Orthodox, and Catholic families without any distinction. And the second one is that the relationship between Albania and Jewish people are really stretched far away. It starts from 1540. So it's a long history and it's a long empathy in between, but I can say that is an empathy that is linked with the actual moment, with the excellent relations that exist in between two countries. I'd like to say that the Albanians are known for their religious tolerance, but I could say that the tolerance is not something that comes in DNA. Of course, needs investments, need to guard, need to nurture, and I am very proud to say that my country is really working in this direction, and this could be a guarantee for the future. But saying this, saying the fact that the tolerance is not something that exists forever, I would emphasize again that it was very important to adopt this working definition, because we need to have a standard, and this definition, I can say, is a standard, and of course need to adopt it in all pyramid of the state, but not only for the pyramid of the state, but for the whole society as well. I recall the idea that such crimes that happened 75 years before, when the world said, never again, it's shocking to see it today. And I'd like to bring today in this conference the fact that I believe everybody knows that sometimes, very often, they describe the anti-Semitism like anti-Israel attacks. But one should think that what has to do a school for kids or let's say a synagogue, or what has to do a center for the culture, or let's say that shop kosher with what is happening in Israel. So this is the idea that I would like to emphasize, that today there are a lot of myths and of course a lot of lack of knowledge as well. I have seen some statistics, not in my country, but somewhere in the Europe or in US as well. And the percentage of the people, it's very high that they are, let's say, linked to the myths, or they have lack of information. And of course, this is clear for the young generation that some of them, they don't know at all what happened during the time of their grandparents or great-grandparents. So as it was said today in this conference, I would like to emphasize the question of education. And I would like to bring a very modest example from Albania. In Albania exists one center that is called Regional Youth Cooperation Center, that it was set up as a part of Berlin process by the proposal of President of Serbia and the Prime Minister of Albania. For example, we can use this center as a center of excellence, and of course could be a catalytic center for civil society and other groups that they can push in the direction of promoting the tolerance and fighting against the anti-Semitism. As it is, if we go beyond, let's say, Erasmus program as a part of the programs from the UA that promote the tolerance. So I would like to say that we have to study on the, let's say, the experiences, the different experiences, and we have to push. And of course, we have to work further for building up, let's say, the collaboration. And another thing that I'd like to emphasize is that our region has a past that, of course, it was a past that suffered because of the hate, and it was a bloodshed. So cross-bordering and cross-cutting programs within the Balkan region and beyond are very important in this moment.
Sure.
I'd like to say that, the social media is really a power, and we have to use it as a power, because I'd like to bring the example of Facebook. What happens recently with the Facebook, that they ban, let's say, the denials of anti-Semitism. We can use other instruments as well for implementing the definition. And of course, we can make media as a great ally, but we have to look at the roots of problem. Allow me, please, to mention something that I can say attacked me recently. Recently, I came across of one article, and there was a passage that it was explaining how Moses tells young Israelis not to hate the Egyptians who had enslaved them. And it was really an amazing piece of advice for me, because only by refusing the hate, you can be free of your past and you can build the future. Otherwise, it will be difficult. But I see this will in the Israeli people, and I see this will even in the philosophy of combating anti-Semitism movement, which recently I had the honor to be part of.
Well, thank you, Valentina. And I want to ask Lord Mann, we just heard a short while ago how the UK was really right at the beginning, one of the first to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. What do you think can be learned from the British experience at adopting it and implementing it?
The key is to implement. So we've asked every local municipality, every city, to adopt it and use it. And I'm delighted to report that already more than 2/3 of municipalities, around 80% of cities have already adopted IHRA and are using it in the UK. We want that to be 100%, and we expect to get to that. Of our 24 major universities, 15 have now adopted it. 3 in the last 2 weeks, after I've initiated a campaign discussing with them. We expect all our universities to adopt it and to use it so that every Jewish student is guaranteed equal rights. And there's a definition of what that guarantee means through the IHRA definition in every university, without exception. We expect to achieve that. In Parliament, 642 out of 643 members of the new British Parliament have signed the definition, so nearly 100%. Every single political party represented at Westminster now uses the definition for educating and, where necessary, disciplining its members and its representatives. That's a huge step forward in the last 12 months. And finally, I've been going around the sports clubs, and particularly the football clubs in England, asking them to adopt the definition. We already have 3 of our biggest clubs using the definition. We have a very major announcement in the near future on many more of our top football clubs adopting IHRA. I think that all of them are likely to do so in the not too distant future. And we're asking tomorrow, I and other ambassadors, every major European football club to adopt the definition in a letter to them. And if I could just illustrate with a tiny example, the first football club to do so was Chelsea. They did the more standard but important things. The players met a Holocaust survivor and were stunned into silence at his testimony. Players, officials and supporters did an educational visit that we helped to arrange for them to Auschwitz-Birkenau, which had a huge impact. Many more such educational initiatives since, but in particular, anti-Semitic Chelsea football supporters found online to be ignorant and anti-Semitic are being invited in to be educated, not by government, not by us, but by their football club, the football club they love, they support, whose shirt they wear. And already we are seeing people apologise for what they have said, what they have done, learn and understand that if they want to be part of the family of their football club, they have to represent its values and therefore not be a racist and not be an anti-Semite. I would like to see the cities of every country that's adopted IHRA adopt it and use it, the universities of every country that's adopted IHRA adopt it and use it, and the football and other major sports clubs of every country that's adopted IHRA adopt it and use it. Then we're really, really going great places, and I think that that's possible.